It's funny for me, because normally when we're filming, you know, after we've done something, we've climbed up or crossed the river or eaten something terrible, the crew are always like, oh, God, okay, great, can't keep moving. This time I remember finishing it and, you know, I went, okay, guys, we're done. And just looking at them all and they were just like, yeah, this is not right. Which is an arguable point. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Well, Simu, by his own admission, is a city guy. We were in northern Canada, winter time, short days, super cold temperatures, bad weather we had that day as well, high winds. By this stage, he'd spend a night out with me. He hadn't slept, he was starving, he was freezing cold. So you're on the back foot already, you know. And then I think to ask somebody to strip down to their underpants and get into freezing water is a big leap. This is a test that the British Royal Marine Commandos do. They strip down, and then they have to get in the water, they have to keep calm. But here's the thing, once we're in there, we're on a ticking time. You know, you got minutes really before you start to lose all sense of not only be able to think laterally, but also be able to move your fingers and your hands. So once we're in, we've got to work really fast. When I suggested this to Simu, he was a bit like, he looked at me like, no, what, really? And I said, well, we'll plan it. We'll get a fire going. We'll have a system. Because the important thing is to make sure when you get out and you're that cold, that you've got systems in place, ultimately to save your life. You know, if you get out of that water with wet clothes and no fire, in that sort of environment, you're dead, you know, genuinely. So we had to get it right. And to Simu's credit, once he kind of got it and we're going to do this, he was like, come on. And you could see the adrenaline build in him. And he was amazing. You know, he just didn't hesitate, got in. There was definitely that hyperventilating of panic, but we did it together and he calmed himself down. And, you know, at the end of that show, I thought respect, you know, that's, you're right on the edge there. Look, this is, you know what that is?
Looks like an octopus.
No, that's placenta.
Well, somebody had a baby.
First of all, Shaq, what a legend of a guy. Such a live wire, such a talent, such an entrepreneur, such a cool guy, but also huge, you know, and we'd never taken a guest this big before. And I remember we were trying to deck him out in the right gear, you know, and the only gloves we could find were oven mitts, you know, the oven gloves, massive great things. We had Shaq like this and we were climbing, I'd been climbing up this cliff with him and on the top there, we just saw it on the ground, a placenta. You know, it's huge. Something big had just given birth, and all was left was this bloody sack of whatever, you know, fluids and everything. And more than likely, it's going to be a moose in that part of the States we were in, up in the forest there. And it was fresh. You know, you could smell it. I mean, if nature tells you if it's off, you go near it, you know pretty quickly it's off. I mean, look at that.
Yeah, looks good.
Actually, it's good. I mean, it's like with blood. You know, it's true survival food. You know, it's there for a purpose. That placenta is feeding that young moose perfectly. So in terms of nutrients and energy density, you don't get much better than placenta. But you just have to kind of get your head around the thing and try and kind of shut that part of it out. It's important for me to always with Running Wild, get the guests involved, you know, get them gutting the fish or whatever. I got Shaq to cut that placenta. He was a bit like, oh, you know, but it's cycle of life, and if you're going to eat it, you've got to help.
This could be lethal quicksand. It's been known to swallow people and vehicles whole. We've set this up so I can show you how to get out of it alive.
This clip was from one of the first ever episodes of Man vs. Wild, when we were still kind of winging it in every way and trying to figure out kind of things. And we'd come across this quicksand, and our default is that we avoid the obstacles. And then we were just figuring out, actually, Man vs. Wild is about let's find the obstacles and let's make something of it, and let's show what you do if you got caught in it. And like with all sharing knowledge, the best way is explanation, demonstration, imitation, you know, as they used to say in the military. In other words, get in, get involved, show what you're doing, show how you get out of it.
And what's nasty about this stuff is the more you fight it, the more it like pulls you in. And look, you suddenly realise it's not just this crust of sand that you thought, but actually it's all of that clay and water.
Remember this, the way to go out is the way you came in. Don't plough on. And then don't fight it. Stay calm and try and get one limb up gently at a time. Try and get yourself on top of this stuff rather than in it. And then just wriggle gently like a seal, spread your weight and get back to safety.
Okay, lunch, here we go.
Look at this.
And now this is for real. I found this on the riverbank, okay? So don't freak out too much. I think the president looked a little surprised when I pulled out this sort of bloody carcass of half-eaten salmon.
Normally we're running wild, we reach out to people. This is one of the few ones where the guest came to us. It just happened to be a sitting president. Kind of a lot of our production crew, and myself included, almost didn't believe it. I remember our producer, Dell, he got a call from the White House saying that Obama was going to Alaska. He wanted to see some of the effects of climate change close up. He was a fan of Running Wild. Would I do a show with him? So before we knew it, I was kind of stood on that riverbank, suddenly getting really nervous. Secret Service everywhere, snipers in the mountains, helicopters doing final sweeps of the area, waiting for the president to appear out of the forest, and definitely a life moment.
Bear,
Hey, Mr. President.
how you doing?
How do you do, sir?
Good to see you, sir.
I'm Bear.
How are you?
Yeah.
It's wonderful to meet you.
In so many ways, Running Wild is like an adventure extended interview, but it goes deep. So you're getting to really know people well because you're out there for 2 days and you're facing a few fears and you're tired and scared at times and you're sleeping out and you're around a fire. So you get to know the real person. People's stories tell themselves if you give it the space. And I always think the real star of Running Wild is actually the wild. And for me, the highlight really was just getting to hear his as a man, as a guy, rather than as a president. And to hear him just talking about his girls, you know, his daughters and his hopes and aspirations and everyday stuff that you'd maybe want to ask somebody in the position as the most powerful man in the world, rather than just about politics and situations and countries. And actually afterwards he said, bring the family to the White House, which we did a few months later. And I was much more nervous then because suddenly everyone's in suits and looking smart, and suddenly you're into that machine. For the family, it was amazing to get to go, to the White House. President Obama had us in the Oval Office. We had kind of tea together. In a way, the cool bit, though, was at the end because there was an incident on Capitol Hill at the same time where there was a breach of security, and we were having tea, and then we were kind of getting near the end anyway, and suddenly the Marines came in and said, sir, we need to move now. Even the president was going, okay, what's happening? He got taken that way, we got taken that way, and we had the Marines escort us. We went into this room, we were sealed in this room for a bit, and then we went down through the Situation Room and out the back entrance of the White House, and afterwards our boys were pretty young, and I said, what was the best bit? And they went, the evacuation, of course,
Okay, we ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Okay,
Yeah.
one more. 1, 2, 3, ready? Push, slide it.
Oh boy. Wait.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So this was with Natalie in the desert, in the canyons. As you know, moving through canyons, dynamic, difficult, slow pace because you're moving along and suddenly there's a huge drop and you can't jump across it.
We're going to do something that's called a rope transfer.
Okay.
You kind of rappel down the first line.
Okay.
And then you pull the other line. And then you transfer your kind of weight into that, and then you pull yourself up that one.
I'd actually pre-set up a loose rope line across this because otherwise we'd never be able to do this. The problem with doing it with one rope is that technically it's not really classified as safe because all your tension is down and a rope strength is that way. You can do these transfers like this, but really you want 2+ ropes on it if you're going to have a lot of weight on it. So I thought, well, why don't we try a different technique, which is an old mountain rescue technique for crossing crevasses and getting gear across. It's called a rope transfer. And instead of just having a tight line, you rappel down. And then when the slack comes, you pull that up, clip onto that one, transfer whilst you're sort of on it still, and then Jumar up and ascend up the other rope. But Natalie's smart. She wanted to be pushed, but it was one of those things that you kind of got to do it on your own. We're all like grapes. When you squeeze us, you see what we're made of, and you never really know how someone's going to react until they're in it, and she was amazing.
I'm on a raft in the Pacific Ocean. I've collected some fresh water, but it's full of bird droppings and it's rancid. Drink this and you'd probably vomit and risk worsening dehydration. But there is a way of using it to gain life-giving fluids, but only as a last resort. I'm going to give myself an enema.
Well, when you're doing survival on rafts, you've got limited number of things you can do. It's not like being in a jungle. We can climb this and cross these rivers. And I knew this great survival story where this family had their boat hit by a whale and it started sinking. They end up in the life raft, this family. The mum was a nurse. They had 2 young kids and the dad. They ran out of all their supplies. They'd caught a few turtles and some fish. They had rainwater, but it was all in the bottom of the life raft. It was fetid and mixed with sort of turtle innards and rainwater. But the nurse knew that if she could get fluids into all of them rectally, i.e. through an enema, it would hydrate them without making them sick. And she did that, and actually it saved her children's life. And I tied the raft with a bunch of old hosing, so I had some hose, I had my water bottle, and I tried to jerry-rig this thing up where I could perform an enema. And it was one of the moments of my life, least comfortable moments, least pleasant moments, probably not to be repeated.
By performing an enema, you bypass the gag reflex, rehydrating your body without the risk of vomiting.
Hey, it worked. And it's funny for me, because normally when we're filming, after we've done something, we've climbed up or crossed the river or eaten something terrible, the crew are always like, oh, God, okay, great, can't keep moving. This time I remember finishing it and, I went, okay, guys, we're done. And just looking at them all, and they were just like, this is not right. Which is an arguable point. But the real point is, it is right and it could save your life. So, you never know. Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
I guess all you can do is lie back and think of England.
I'm not quite sure what part of England I was thinking about. I'm not sure I'm selling England particularly well. Yeah, it was eye-watering. That's all I remember.
So there you go, look, hold on. So those bits, I mean, it's
the stingy bits.
It's slippery, but those are those. Ow!
It got you?
Yeah, papa.
So he got stung by a jellyfish, and I've seen it in movies before where if somebody gets stung by a jellyfish, you have to pee on them.
Here you go, look.
This is so inappropriate, by the way. Let's see if I have pee.
First of all, Mel B, what an amazing lady with a true life story. Her journey has been incredible. I admire her tenacity and spirit so much. But we were in Wales in the UK, swimming ashore, and I got stung by a jellyfish. And you can see the rash just came up on my arm. And then Mel saw it, and she instantly went,
do you need me to pee on you?
Are
you ready?
I hasten to add, the more research is done into this, the more tenuous this is. But certainly back then, it was something, I'd grown up with, was always like my dad always telling me, if you get stung by a jellyfish, pee in it. Mel B knew that. She said, I'll help, I'll pee on it. I just never forget her grabbing my hand and squatting down and peeing on my hand.
If you just relax, then I'll relax. Now I've got stage fright.
I can't relax.
Did it help? Not really, apart from it made us both laugh. I mean, the thing is, it did actually take away a little bit of the sting, but I don't know whether that was just sort of warm Spice Girl urine.
There you go. Don't say I don't do anything for you.
You don't always get every guest being willing to do crazy things all the time, and Mel was of that spirit of like, come on, let's try it, we'll do it. So thank you, Mel. That one is in here and in here, unforgettable.
Okay, so this feels suspiciously like jumping out of the plane.
Yeah. Here we go. Okay, so we got to go at the same time.
Yep.
There we go.
Right, so maybe not too much at the same time, so we don't rag each other.
Normally with Running Wild, the guys I'm taking are rookies. They might be Hollywood superstars and amazing sportsmen, but in terms of survival and wilderness adventure, they're often rookies, which means, it's very much kind of case of I've got the coil of rope and the compass and come on, we'll go together, but we're going this way. Alex is obviously a different beast in the sense that he's probably one of the greatest climbers that's ever lived. He didn't need any guiding. This part of the journey, we were crossing this gorge on this suspension wires. We didn't want to cross the whole thing. I actually wanted to get down into the gorge, but there was nothing really solid or good to tie off to on the edges. So I thought, well, let's go to the middle. We'll tie the rope, drop it, and we'll just free rappel straight down the middle.
3, 2, 1, see ya.
But it was interesting because, here's a guy who's so fearless, but so fearless within his zone, and I think his zone is he's always on the rock. And I think for this, when we did a counterbalance, so the rope just went over the top and you got to go at the same time. Otherwise, you've got to make sure it's simultaneous. And he was going, oh, wow, it's a long way down, And I think it's so funny for even someone like the great Alex Honnold, when you look into free space with nothing tangible, there's no rock next to you. It's a different dynamic. It was heartening to see just a flicker of kind of nerves for a second with him. Yeah, what a good guy.
and you see all of the blood coming out of its jugular there, and that really in an emergency survival situation is food and life.
You know, survival is never pretty. This was in Siberia in wintertime. We were with the Tuva tribesmen up there, who are nomadic indigenous people up in that part of Russia. Hard life, you know, sub-zero for a lot of the year, crazy winds, and they live off the land. But obviously a big beast like yak is incredibly valuable for them. They don't want to be killing a yak for meat unless it's old and it's on the way out. You know, their staple way of doing it is that they will cut into the carotid artery here, and they have almost like a tap on it where they can plug it, and they can just release that clot. They can fill up some jars and stuff with blood. But if you're in an emergency situation, blood is absolutely right up there in terms of survival food. Maybe after liver, but blood is just, it's warm, it's nutritious, got all the amino acids, all the protein, all the energy, the salts you need.
Warm, salty. But if you hadn't eaten, came across this literally would save you.
I think with so much of food, there's always a connection with people when you eat together. Certainly in terms of survival, I think it's the same. And in terms of indigenous cultures, when you share something that's important and almost has a spiritual element to them, you create connections. I definitely notice afterwards big smiles on a lot of the, you know, indigenous folk, and, you know, as far as they're concerned, I suppose you're part of the family, sharing the blood. But they were amazing guys and always so hospitable and kind to me.